The Short Game is listener-supported on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show and join us on our Discord, head to theshortgame.net or patreon.com/theshortgame.
Welcome back to The Short Game. This is a show about short video games, games that respect your time. I am joined this week like a warm blanket wrapped around me, once again with most of my co-hosts.
Laura Dash.
And most of Shane Kelly.
Nate couldn't be here this week. Sorry, Nate. No, I'm just saying that because last week was my first week back after a 2-week break, which was a very weird thing for me. And then Laura, you and I did that episode. That was fun. But now we're back with Shane.
We're just like very slowly getting the Avengers back together.
Exactly. We're going to find
You
Nate.
son of a bitch, I'm in.
He's going to have gotten fat and grown a beard.
And my axe.
Exactly. And this week we are talking about Viewfinder, a game that I've been looking forward to playing since the very first trailer I saw of this. Like, sometimes you see a first-person puzzle mechanic in the Portal vein, and it's a new one. And I'm always so excited when there's a new one. So this is a new one. I love it. I love that.
Honestly, yes.
Yeah.
The mechanic on this was so exciting. The first trailer, you just saw someone place a picture into the world and then walk into the picture and it's 3D. And I was just like, sold, take my money, put this on the calendar. We're doing this. I hope it's not 30 hours long for some reason. And it's not. It's
not.
Short.
It's great. It's just in our wheelhouse.
Yeah, I have always loved puzzle games that use perspective puzzles where, there was a lot of this in The Witness, say what you will about that game. It had magnificent perspective puzzles.
I'm not good at them, but I like them. I have no spatial reasoning skills.
They are such a funny, video game mechanic or game style or whatever you want to call it, because it's like, okay, hey, you've gotten pretty decent with FPS mechanics from playing 1,000 hours of Halo. Now let's do something slow where you can sit in chairs and pet a cat, but you need to be incredibly precise in your positioning and your understanding of angles. All of those important FPS skills are still maybe more relevant than ever.
Do you remember in middle school when they made us take the aptitude tests by drawing, connecting dots or rotating boxes? Mm-hmm. Or do you remember this? Yeah.
Not at all.
The fitness gram pacer test is increasingly difficult. What is the damn? I thought I could quote that test from memory, but yes, I remember all these things.
Yeah, I remember scoring reasonably well on most things, and then they were like, "You took twice as long as everybody else to rotate a box, box that you had to they had a flat box with letters on it, and you had to decide what sides the letters would be on when it turned into a cube." And they were like, "Are you okay?" Because you slowed way down. And I was like, "I have trouble with the things becoming 3D things." And they were just like, "It's a very specific thing to be bad at."
That is so funny because some people are so good at it and some people are so bad at it, but it's on all of these intelligence tests, but some of the smartest people I know cannot rotate the cube in their mind.
No, it's like suddenly someone black holed that ability for my brain and was like, "Shh, you can memorize words quickly." We'll just take that part.
That part's good.
That part's good.
Well, that's okay, Laura. You and me can stick to the 2D games.
But I love these because they're so my brain breaks in the way that you're like, how can that be real? In a great way. But I also am like, yes, spatial reasoning puzzles.
Yes.
So Raygan introduced these. I've got a question for you, Laura, because Raygan kind of introduced these as a. There's if Metroidvania can be a genre, Portal 2 can be a genre. So in these sort of Portal style puzzle games, Portal-likes.
You can't call it a Portal-like.
I reject that as a classification. I reject that. but go ahead.
We're making jokes.
We know what you mean. First-person puzzle games.
We're making
First-person
jokes to
puzzle
make Raygan
games.
mad. Continue,
Yes.
Shane.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not allowed to make up genres. All right. Fine.
You're not allowed to make me mad.
I called the game last week a Woods Like, and that also made Raygan mad.
Oh, it's like yes. Okay.
Continue, Shane.
But so now that sidebar may have completely blanked my question, but the thing I want to know is like, how do you do with like the other games in this style? Let's go specifically back to Portal and say like, how much does rotating your mental cube impact your Portal experience?
It's definitely slower. I think it's the same thing that makes me get lost in a 3D world without looking at the map. Also affects like a portal with multiple rooms much harder for me than a portal with one room, where I'm like, I don't have problems with the Tesseract of like.
Man, imagine this game with a map though. Like imagine this game if it had a map, but then you could pick up the map.
Yeah, but like a teleportation game of this is now connected to here, not so bad because it's just like making a fake, not real world. But a game where the geography needs to make sense at the end of the day, I have a lot more problems with. So this where you're just like making fake worlds and you're just using the 2D visual to fake your way through, fine. The games where you're actually trying to like a maquette, I have a bigger problem with. I don't think we played that for the podcast.
We did not, but yeah.
But some of the 3D ones that require that don't require reality bending, but require like actually remembering what things are in a room that you're not in, way harder for me.
Yeah. This one really reminded me of that Superliminal that we played, because there's also a lot of the same kind of perspective element to that.
I didn't like this game as much, but this has a lot also in common with certain parts of Antichamber. Antichamber does a lot of this sort of perspective puzzles too.
I don't know how many of our listeners have played like this many of this thing, so like maybe we should kind of categorize them as we discuss them a little bit.
Let me talk a little bit about what this game is specifically doing, because you do kind of get it from the trailer, but I do need this being a podcast, I sort of need to describe it. The mechanic here, the core mechanic, is that you are proceeding through a sort of world of floating vaporwave architecture. And in many places in this world, you will find photographs, little square Instagrammy photographs of other, vaguely floaty, vaporwavy architecture. But
I like how you're saying these are Instagrammy and not Polaroidy.
They're Polaroids,
but they don't have frames. They don't have frames. Okay, you're right. That's a better call out. So you hold these little photographs up, and I don't know, invoke them. You place them in the world, and from wherever you're standing,
they really nailed this. Like the action of taking a picture is like on one of your triggers, right?
Yeah,
and so is holding up a picture and like applying a picture. It's like it's all right there, and it
feels so tactile.
The controls are extremely tactile. Like the holding of something up and just like you grab it and you stick it here. Works but
what's cool about this is like you place the picture, and if you stand perfectly still in the place where you were when you placed the picture, absolutely nothing changes. It just looks as if this picture is floating in midair in front of you in just a perfect 2D photograph. But you take even the slightest step off axis, and suddenly you realize that when you placed that photograph in the world, you've actually placed an entire sort of 3D diorama of that at life-size scale of that photograph into the world. And so it will obliterate anything that would have been in the space that it occupies. So you can sort of just, cut out huge chunks of the level geometry with these photographs if you place them in certain places. And anything that was in the photograph is now a 3D object, and you can go and interact with it. And they continue to expand on this with a lot, of course, the sort of logical expansions on the mechanic. Like, for example, suddenly you have the option to take photographs with a camera, or other sort of expansions on this mechanic. But it's in a good puzzle gamey kind of way. It just gives you every possible way that you could use this central, really cool, really technically impressive 3D level geometry thing that they're doing, this photograph placing mechanic.
Mhm.
And again, you can place them on any angle. You can look up in the sky. You can look directly down and place a photograph that you then fall into. Like, you can place them anywhere on any angle. You can rotate photographs. So you have a lot of control over placing these things. And every time you do, you are making huge changes to the level geometry. And you have to use that, of course, then to solve puzzles. Basically, most of the puzzles involve getting from point A to point B, but doing so using these cool photograph mechanics.
It's like the MC Escher painting where there's stairs that are facing the wrong way. The geometry of these levels is like highly artificial, like cubist, but very cozy. And so you're using this camera mechanic to just sort of cut and paste big chunks and then like rotate them. So it's like you have that MC Escher thing, but you're trying to connect all the staircases by cutting the picture apart. It's really fun.
One of my favorite things to do is right before you step into the teleporter at the end of the level, I would turn around and look at the horrors I had created. It's really a cool magic trick that when you're going forward, it feels very inevitable. You don't see necessarily, well, you do in the later levels, but in early levels, you don't see the chaos you've wreaked. But if you step to the side or you're looking kind of askance at it, you suddenly see just the broken pieces of photographs that are lingering or the impossible geometry you've made. And it's really cool. I do suggest like it's really easy in a game like this to just be like, solved it. Next one. Where's the photograph go? And it like the slowing down made me like the game a lot more.
Yeah, especially just like getting a look at like little stuff really it becomes visually striking when you place one of these photographs. A photograph is rarely of a complete scene. It's sort of like a slice. And so you get these sort of like bisected buildings and they intersect at weird angles with the stuff that you're placing them into. Every photograph, of course, has like a background, and so you're in these buildings that sort of feel like they're floating in space, and you have this background all around you, this skybox. But when you place a photograph, very often it has a different skybox, and if you look out in the background, you see this like square imposed on the sky from your photograph, like really interesting, strange stuff, and. Yeah, when once you place one of these, you might just be doing something as simple as I take a tower, a photograph of a tower, and I turn it on its side, and now I've got a bridge. Boom, right? But then, really, if you look at that structure, it is just really strange looking and really cool. So it's just such a cool mechanic. Like it's just cool on its face. You do it, and you're like, "Wow, that was really neat." I don't know how else to put it. Good criticism there, Raygan.
Well, it also keeps being cool. Like that's the surprising thing is I think there's a lot of good exploration of mechanics, but they switch things up. But I still think like the thing that makes this game fun is placing a photograph, stepping to the side and being like, whoa, like that is almost always effective. Like they do a really good job of heightening that in different ways throughout the levels.
Yeah, calling it a magic trick is a really good way of putting it. Like, there's been other games that have kind of pulled similar magic tricks with perspective. I think Superliminal, as Shane mentioned earlier, is a great call out because that was a game that played a lot with scale. You'd pick up an object, place it in a different perspective, and suddenly it was larger or smaller than it had been before.
Mm-hmm.
Scale was interesting. There's very little playing with scale in this game.
That's true. It does sort of naturally feel like when you hold a photograph up in front of you, you're always holding it at a consistent distance.
Yeah.
And if it's a photograph of something that's very far away from you, it usually does kind of have that depth. It doesn't seem to change the size or scale, but it still sort of feels like a similar kind of magic trick, like Laura was saying.
It's more like alignment. It's like taking if you're looking at the world through a camera lens and you're like trying to frame a picture, stepping back and forth. Like it has that feel of you're not changing scale, but you are changing where things attach. Like this 2D object suddenly needs to attach itself to a 3D environment. So it's at scale, but it's a lot of tweaking rotations, tweaking angles. Can this go like what happens if it's on its side? Like all kinds of little things. The rotation is more fun than I thought it would be.
And sometimes that z-axis is a little unpredictable or hard to sort of judge. You'll place something into the world and realize that it doesn't intersect where or how you expected it to.
But that rewind mechanic's so friendly.
Really good, really friendly. The biggest thing that they play with, I think, is that is a limiting factor in a lot of these puzzles that really is very much a part of all the challenges, is the fact that all of these pictures, they're all about the same size. So you only have about this 15-degree cone facing out from wherever you are when you hold up a picture. And that is where you need to get that exactly lined up so that you can bridge a gap or create a ramp, et cetera, et cetera. And it's so many different ways that comes into play.
So we mentioned the rewind mechanic. Laura, do you want to explain that? Because I think that's almost less revolutionary than the sort of perspective photograph mechanic here, but almost just as important to the puzzle.
Very well done.
Yeah. So I played with an Xbox controller on PC, and it was just the B button, which is I hit by accident at the beginning. It's a quick rewind time. Looks like a VCR, like a wreck in the corner, and you see it rewinding. But the thing that makes it super friendly is the timeline not only has indicators for like a V when you fall off the world, or a little note where or you can see a little like thumbnail of the photo you placed and a marker of when you placed it, so you know how far back to rewind. They also have jumps, so you can hit the B button twice and it will go back to that last checkpoint, so you don't have to sit and rewind. And I used this when I went somewhere to a dead end and I didn't want to walk back. I just rewound time so I didn't have to walk all the way back to the beginning. Like, I used it very liberally, even when I wasn't making mistakes, just to quick travel. It was that easy to use. And in other games, the rewind mechanic is so slow that I would only use it when I died.
Yeah, you don't have to watch yourself. I mean, you can, if you just sort of hold down the button, you can sort of watch yourself doing things in reverse. But I also use it that way. I was mostly doing the double tap to rewind back to the last, the sort of automatic checkpoints that happen every time you do a sort of puzzle significant action. So it was a really great mechanic and just really well implemented. Just being able to quickly jump back to, and you could hit the B button again and jump back to another and another and another. It meant that once you sort of figured out a puzzle solution, usually they're very quick to implement. Mm-hmm. We've talked a lot about how there's like a big sort of pet peeve for us, or I guess, I don't know, something that makes puzzle games work is how fast it is to implement a solution once you have discovered what it is. And in general, this game has like very quick time to implement your puzzle solution once you realize what the solution is, and very little fussing around with sort of setting things up or getting things ready to solve a puzzle.
The level time is exploration and thinking, not solving the puzzle.
Yeah, almost all of the puzzles you're able to solve with far fewer photos than it gives you access to. Sometimes they do limit you, but like a lot of times I've messed around and I've taken like 5 photos and done a ton of copying and pasting around. But then once you understand exactly what you need to do, you just mash the B button, you rewind the entire way to the start of the level, and then in seconds you're done.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I think of as an elegant puzzle design. It's, you get it, you're done. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's almost no point in speedrunning this game. It'll take like 30 seconds. I don't know, some ludicrously short amount of time. And that's what I think should be the case for a puzzle game.
Yeah, it is just, it's so smoothly implemented. And the placing of the photos is fast. You can basically place a photo and like quickly run across the bridge or whatever it is that you've created. There were times where like I spent a lot of time really banging my head against a puzzle. There were some where I, really did feel like lost until suddenly I had a brainwave and figured something important out. But
usually it was rotating the image.
Yeah, that. Or realizing that you could take a picture of something that you'd already placed. Like, a lot of puzzle solutions that that took me a long time to figure out were like, oh, I can take a picture of a picture.
You just got to inception yourself, Raygan.
Yeah.
I want to throw out there that this game, we're talking so much about the puzzles, but this game, although it has puzzles, it is a puzzle game. There are big chunks, especially early on, where they're really just wanting you to have fun aesthetically with this mechanic. There's in particular, there's a level that I think had very little in the way of actual puzzles, but had over and over again different artistic styles for the photos, which is incredibly fun to play with. And this game is also full of things that aren't little 3x3 Polaroids. This game is, you're picking up postcards and little gag images that are just fun to place and figure out what they're actually like in 3 dimensions, like 2D things that turn interesting in 3D.
That's
so
true. That
all
was
of that
phenomenal.
is so cool.
I was so nervous earlier in the game because the beginning of the game, it has this like lush outstory, but there's a lot of, Unity assets. There's nothing wrong with Unity assets, but I didn't think it was. And then pretty quickly, like maybe 5-6 levels in, you started to get really inventive things you're going into. You're going into drawings, paintings. And I realized that like, oh, yep, that is correct. That is where the money should be spent. That is where the art gets to go. And later on, it gets way wilder and more inventive, and there's more weirdness and surrealism. I wish that first world, like I wasn't worried. Like it doesn't look bad, but it did feel a little stockish with a lot of, I was like, okay, it's stock, but it's got some artist stuff in it. And then I was like, oh, nope, there's a lot here.
They were definitely reserving some of their like best visuals for later. Like little stuff shows up pretty early on. Things like you get to like Xerox a photo, and then that means that you have like increasingly crummy looking versions of the photo.
That was so good. Yeah.
And then when you place them, you're walking around in a badly photocopied landscape, and that's just visually really cool to see in 3 dimensions. So I really, really liked that stuff. In fact, there's a bit later where you can apply different filters to your photos. You could choose which one you like better just for aesthetic reasons. And I loved that. I thought that was great. I was like, I like this purplish looking one. When I placed photos, I want them to look purplish, and it's cool. So they really nailed the visuals here, and that it has this vibe. Shane kind of mentioned that these spaces are kind of weirdly lived in. We haven't talked about the plot yet, and we should make that a point. But something kind of weird about this is like these surreal spaces, right? This is, jumping ahead to talking plot stuff. This is a simulation where people lived and spent a lot of time in a simulation. And so while they are these surreal, disconnected, weird spaces, they are also a place where people lived and worked, and there's all sorts of evidence
and like
throughout.
Ate nothing but chocolate.
Yeah, ate lots of chocolate and drank a lot of
tea,
cozy slippers,
and read
pet
books.
Their virtual cat.
I mean, honestly, if the virtual reality looks like my house, like what's the point? Like, what? I want it to be cozy and a little weird.
Yeah, and like comfy chair. The vibe is like weird, impossible MC Escher architecture, but every now and then there's a corner nook with a really nice looking chair
and like 30 hammocks.
Yeah,
and you can't. That's actually important to note. One thing I really appreciate about this game is, it wants you to, even though these levels are like very objective based, and I was kind of cruising through them, it does want you to kind of take a moment and chill, because all the chairs, and they're lovely chairs, you can sit down in those chairs and just have a look around and chill for a second. And just as importantly, there is a cat you can pet. So that they want you to like luxuriate in these environments, which was a surprise to me, because when I initially saw aesthetically the game, you mentioned they kind of reserve some of their best looks for later in the game. I think that's exemplified by their Steam banner image, which looks so bland.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you're right. That is kind of bland. It is, it's like their first level is basically like brutalist concrete with like weird purple plants sticking out everywhere, and that's kind of what they go with in the main imagery on the game. And that's
with a little bit of the black and white photo at an angle in there to give you the Escher vibes, I think.
Yeah.
But like, it's even hard to see that that's a separate thing. Like, nope, not a fan. But that's you don't yell at marketing departments very often, but like that's not a very interesting asset.
That said, they do have, like, if you look over their Steam page, they have a GIF that is like the perfect GIF to explain this game, rotating a photograph of a building to create a ramp to get up to like one of the teleporter objectives. Like they do a really good job in their marketing of like, here's the pitch. This is a game where you rotate things, you place them in the world, suddenly they become three-dimensional.
You need
Cool,
about 10
weird
seconds,
perspective.
and
It is
got
a
it.
GIF that explains the entire game, and it is a 3-second looping GIF. So, like, they've done a pretty good job putting their best foot forward here, I think, for the most part.
It's not a game about still images. Like oddly enough, like they don't communicate what makes this game cool.
Yeah, they explain that GIF explains the game 1,000 times better than any of the like marketing for Superliminal did. Superliminal, like we found it almost impossible to fully explain the various things you're doing with moving objects around in that game and the scale and sizing and perspective puzzles. Like this game, you get it right away. You see that camera, you're like, cut, paste. Okay, I get it.
So we do need to talk about the plot, though.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, it's not my favorite thing about the game. I think a lot of people reacted to it more negatively than I did. I did find it at least interesting and somewhat engaging. Like it kept me moving. I didn't dislike it. I do need to. So before I talk about the plot, I want to mention something that I think maybe a lot of folks will have seen, depending on what sort of online circles you run in. This game had it had what I think is probably one of the worst case scenario, like first day the game is out, like viral videos ever, like a really unfortunate thing. If you haven't seen it, there is a clip going around with this game where like it's a streamer, apparently somebody named Vinny from something called Vine Sauce is a streamer, I don't know, was streaming the game. And this 15-second clip of him playing the game went totally viral, which is basically he's playing the first level. And throughout this game, you have a woman who sort of talks in your ear, who is, in the context of the story, she is sort of your partner. You are sort of spelunking through this virtual world, trying to find something that will help you out in the real world. It's like you're trying to people apparently in this simulation were working on something to help solve climate change. You're going into the simulation to try to find what they worked on. But anyway, she's sort of in your ear through a lot of the game, especially early on. And the very first time you place a photograph, she says something like, did you just bend reality? And frankly, it's kind of a cringe line of dialogue. It's functional, it's an NPC commenting on what you did, but it has a little bit of a feel of that, like that Forspoken, like, I just move shit with my freaking mind. Okay, that's what I do now. Kind of like, that just happened kind of quote, right? And so, and of course the viral clip is like he encounters the very first line of dialogue like this, and then in the clip immediately goes into the menus and mutes the dialogue. And I'll say, if you encountered this clip and you were put off from this game based on
literally the worst line delivery in it.
But being given the impression that this game is like full of somebody talking in your ear constantly with like cringe commentary.
It ain't.
It's not. Like it maybe there were a few lines early on that were kind of like that. But mostly I thought it was fine. I didn't have any problem with that. And in fact, you hear a lot more from Kate the cat than you do from your weird
if you mute this game, you're gonna miss out on Kate the cat with the Scottish accent. That's like the Cheshire cat teleporting around. Love it. Great.
I loved the cat. So like I think that overall the voice acting here isn't intrusive. There's not too much of it, and it's mostly fine, with only a handful of exceptions, mostly in the first level. So I'm kind of sad that folks got that impression about this game, and that I do believe it actually, this is the kind of thing that happening so close to launch, this is the kind of thing going viral that can affect a game's reputation. I think it's a bit of a bummer.
Yeah, it definitely didn't bother me. I mean, I just kind of was like, okay. I mean, I would have preferred a like never gets old or something, like, because it doesn't make sense. But like, I haven't thought about that line until you showed me that video. Like, I just was like, it's a tutorial line, and they didn't, not the best one I've ever seen. But I think, I don't know. I was just like, my first thought was, oh, this game has voiceover? Weird. Okay. I just moved on.
I'll be honest, I didn't expect the game to have voiceover. I expected it to be more of sort of like a silent experience, kind of akin to things like Antechamber, rather than, it's not like,
or maybe
Portal.
You listen to a tape and that is,
yeah. And there are sort of audio logs, like ever present little like gramophones in levels where you hear the voices of the people who were in the space before you. But there's also sort of this, person who seems to be sort of your handler or partner who's like, on the outside, waiting for you to find the mysterious thing in the simulation. Did anybody like, is there anything to say about the story other than just you're going into this simulation trying to find something that people previously worked on to solve climate change?
I don't think so. I mean, the story it's not story forward.
No.
It's not going to, I mean, a couple levels in, you realize like there's a glitch, and you realize that you're back in a lab and you're in a simulation.
The glitching was cool, by the way. Like, that was a really cool moment.
It was super cool. But I think other than that, like, it's not as if the whole time they're like, we've got to get the secret device. Like, it's not that kind of game. They're not really talking about your objective all the time. You can zone out and do puzzles most of the time. It, of course, increases as you go through, but it's not heavy-handed. That's not the puzzles are the point here.
Yeah, I agree. I think it didn't need the story, but I don't think it really gets in the way.
No.
So I had no issues with it, really. And there were, it gives you an excuse in a game like this to have that sort of like random clutter of stuff. And, and I appreciated that because I feel like that enhanced the vibes. This would have been a lesser game if it didn't have like messy coffee tables, right? I appreciated that in the world, even if the story reason for it, there were a bunch of scientists in here working on something very hard, and now they're mysteriously gone, and we're, hunting through their remainders. It's an okay setup, but like it didn't really drive the game forward for me. But I think it was worth having. I don't think it was a bad inclusion. But yeah, not what kept me moving through the game, really.
Before I wrap up, I want to talk a bit about how the game progresses, like mechanically, because at the beginning you're finding drawings and photographs in the world and putting them up. Later on, you are able to take photographs, but the game is really good at limiting what you can do so that it continues to be challenging. Like, maybe you can't photograph this wall. Maybe you take pictures of yourself. Maybe you need to like this section is like the camera angle won't work. I think it's really clever in how an incredibly powerful mechanic gets nerfed. And like, that seemed pretty cool to me. I want to get your takes.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think like a lot of this game is about putting guardrails around this hyper powerful cut and paste ability. Like, if you had the camera from the start and you had unlimited film,
you could just make such a mess.
you could. And in fact, they play with that a lot. My favorite moments of the game weren't really the puzzles. They were places where, like, for example, that moment where you kind of get out of the simulation. Do you remember this moment? I mean, this is a spoiler.
Yeah, you're talking about when we sort of mentioned it already when they start having those glitches and you sort of escape the weird simulation egg.
Yeah, the glitch in particular, though, like that was super fun to play with because you have this moment where you have you're really abusing this cut and paste ability by by having a photo that contains itself that you can kind of place recursively over and over and over again.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah, so you're messing with the outer limits of what you can do. You can really create like a snake of rooms. And there's
the error,
other
I think,
places.
says paradox.
Yeah. I think I felt the same way around a lot of the kind of unique images that weren't photographs that you could play with, especially things like, I hope none of these are spoilers, but there's things like a screenshot from an 8-bit game, or a map of a park that's a relief map from like 1,000-foot perspective. Like, these are really crazy things to like paste into the world. And we have a bold anti-collectibles stance as a podcast, but more and more lately I'm finding games where they're doing them really well. This game hides stuff in really clever places, like inside of a little picture of a house on a map that you find on a table. And so, that's to me some of the most satisfying stuff in this game. And none of it was really like explicitly puzzles. It's just like, hey, this mechanic lets you poke around in some weird ways. And, that's what I'm going to take away from this game most.
I mean, I am very excited by a game that lets you play, and this feels very playful, and like I'm not mad at the guardrails because I'm like, ooh, I can't do that, I have to think of another way to solve it. Like,
exactly.
Games that don't irritate me when they put guardrails up are my favorite kind of puzzle games.
Yeah, and they were all just to help with the sort of creativity of the puzzles. Even little stuff like having a limit on your film meant that like you always, an interesting puzzle is when you have just the right number of, photographs that you can take and do the thing. But a really fascinating puzzle is when it really seems like you have one fewer than you're supposed to, right? Like, that's great when you're like, wait, this has an obvious solution, but I don't have enough film in the camera. How do I do this in a more creative way where I have to, do it with one fewer photograph? That's where it gets really interesting. And so like this game does that really well. Like every puzzle was interesting in that way. So I had a lot of fun with it. I would strongly recommend this game. I think this is a really, really good one. And, all the criticism of its story aside, which honestly didn't get that deafening or what have you, but I think it was, inopportune timing. But I think this is a great one of these. I think this is now in the canon of Portal 1 and 2 alikes, whatever you called them, Shane.
Yeah, well, I was trying to make a portmanteau of Portal and Portal, so I guess we'll go with Portalortal.
Portalortal likes.
Oh, it's like, well, maybe Portal and Portal 2, so it'll be a Portalortal 2.
Yeah.
God, no. Oh, I'm sure that. So I think this is instantly one of the better ones of those that I've played, which is, saying something. We play like pretty much anytime one of these types of things comes out that has an even remotely novel spin, we try to play it on the show because they tend to fit with our length requirements.
Yeah.
And they're a genre that we all like. So I was really pleased that this turned out as well as it did. I had a lot of fun with it. And I guess we should say, I think, how long did the game seem to take for you guys? Let me check how long to beat.
I've been seeing 5 to 8 hours in reviews.
Yeah, I think it's been. How Long to Beat has it a lot shorter than that. They say like a main story is like 3.5 hours, and main plus extra is 4. Completionist is 6. I usually take longer than Viewfinder than How Long to Beat. I tend to be on the completionist end of that, even if I'm only doing the main story. But I'd say 5-ish hours is probably about right for this. I don't know exactly what my Steam clock said, but somewhere in that neighborhood for sure. Certainly under 10. So definitely something for the short game crew if you are looking for something to play of a weekend.
And if you're the sort of person, chapters.
Yeah, if you're the sort of person who is a little bit of a completionist, which I know, then it's that's not all of this, but this game rewards that impulse. Like, this is the kind of place where if there is a corner to look in, there's something to look at.
Yeah, and there are also some optional levels. Like every zone or whatever you want to call it has like one optional set of levels that are like bonus or hard versions of whatever the main mechanic is for that area. I didn't do all of them in my playthrough. I did like half of them. But they're there if you want to like stretch it a little bit and try something a little harder. And I will say that the first one that I ran into seemed completely impossible, and I completely backed out of it. And later on, I was like, oh. So you can go back to any previous level. You can even go back and redo levels you've already completed at any time. It's pretty easy to do. So, and probably worth doing in some cases once you've come up with new ideas about how to handle this mechanic. So, been a little while since we did one. We got some time here at the end for some What's Making Us Happy.
We literally did one last week. But we talked about travel.
Oh,
Sorry.
That's right. I'll leave it. I forgot. It's been a little while since I did one of these that wasn't the one we did last week.
Yes.
Yes.
It's been a whole week.
Yes. So I guess
Nate and I did one while you were gone.
Oh, dang.
Yep,
well, Shane,
I listened to that episode.
I did. I edited that episode, so I've just forgotten everything in my brain. Shane, what's making you happy this week?
I will tell you. It's a return to a literary classic. It's The Hobbit. Yes. A little while ago, I decided I wanted to read The Hobbit as a bedtime story for my son because I love the book. I haven't read it in many, many, many years. I wanted to figure out what is the version of The Hobbit that is the best for that, like for reading as a bedtime story. And to me, like there are a lot of editions of the book The Hobbit that have kind of a like adult enthusiast printing sort of vibe and not a kid's bedtime book kind of vibe. The art in many of the illustrated versions of The Hobbit is incredible, fantastic fantasy art, beautiful. But I think it's more important for a book that you're reading to kids at bedtime to be just to have a lot of illustrations, on every page if you can swing it, which you probably can't. It's a huge book. But it should have nice big illustrations with like lots of little pictures of what's going on in the story for the kids to hang their memory on. And so the version of The Hobbit that I found is illustrated by Jemima Catlin. And it is, I didn't even realize this when I ordered it off of, Bezosmart.com. It's actually not just beautifully illustrated with lots of illustration throughout. It is a really nice printing as well. It came in it has a gold leaf on the cover and everything. So
nice.
Perfect little book. Not little, it's actually a very large book. Anyway, it has been so long since I read The Hobbit, and we're making it through maybe like half a chapter a night. Some of these chapters are actually kind of slow and take like a little while to get through. Because of course, the story of Bilbo starts off in this idyllic Shire where, it's a very chill, relaxing story. And the way that Tolkien writes has this beautiful rhythm to it. So it works it's very efficacious as a bedtime story.
Want, man. That's just what you want.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. There's some extreme sleepy time energy, especially in the Shire. But that said, let's not forget that this is one of the most murdery kids' books alive.
Oh, absolutely.
The whole stretch from when the dwarves, Bilbo and Gandalf are captured by goblins in the mountains, like straight through to when they are rescued by eagles in the forest is absolute fire. I have forgotten how fantastic this book is, and it is just a delight. I'm even pondering rewatching the movies because my enthusiasm for The Hobbit could not be any higher than it is right now. So
Yeah. I encourage folks to look up this edition. I just looked up the YouTube because I don't know if any of you have done this, but I have many times looked at just beautiful books on YouTube where people will just open books and show you all the illustrations because this is the exciting life I live as a childless adult. But someone has put this book up in 4K and man, it looks gorgeous. Like good choice, Shane.
It is. It's like a little bit, I think people might gravitate away from it just seeing it because the art is a little bit on the more sketchy, almost Quentin Hoover-y. Is Quentin Hoover the name I'm looking for? Who's the guy that used to
Blake.
do Quentin Blake? Quentin Hoover did magic cards.
Of course.
Quentin Blake did
Roald Dahl.
the Roald Dahl books, right? So this is almost in that direction. It's like really like illustratory, like beautiful pen drawings, and not the like wood block, perfection that some of the other ones are, where you can get that edition that matches the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Silmarillion with the perfect Norse-inspired runic bound.
Nah, these rip.
For kids, man. Yeah. I mean, for me, yes. Like, but actually, maybe for me, this instead. It's great.
Yeah.
I love
that's
it, man.
making me super happy. Love it.
I want to check that out. Maybe when I'm at your house, I want to leaf through that and take a look at it because that sounds great.
Well, it's already got a bunch of fig jelly staining the front, beautiful like linen front cover, which I mean is a little bit on point for a Hobbit, but
that's absolutely
Paddington Hobbit.
It doesn't look as good as it did right out of the box.
That's all right, man. No, you've got good recommendations on this front. Like my kids are a little younger than yours, but you suggested the original like Wizard of Oz. Which I would never have really considered reading to my kid, but one day I needed something and you can download that shit for free. It's out of copyright. So I did. And that was also a winner.
Just don't keep going because they get real weird.
Yeah, no, we did not. We dropped it after.
Stop after the first.
Yeah, but it actually holds up and was more interesting than I would have expected in retrospect. And my kids had lots of questions to which I did not. Well, my kid had lots of questions to which I did not have answers about that book. But it was fun. So yeah, that's
what kind of questions. Because
I'm trying to remember. She asked me a lot of questions about like the specifics of like how people live in the Munchkin town. Like they stay a night at like a Munchkin, like I don't know, like a bed and breakfast or something.
Yeah,
I forget. She
in the woods, right? Was this when she met the Tin Woodsman?
Yeah, or maybe before that. Yeah, she had a lot of questions about that. Yeah. She had a lot of questions about like about the Tin Woodsman and how like his whole story was fascinating.
How did he go to the bathroom?
No, it's more like the Tin Woodsman's backstory, which I never really knew, is all about like he
giving up pieces of himself.
Yeah, like he keeps like getting rid of. It's like a Ship of Theseus thing where he keeps like losing an arm and then replacing it with a tin arm and then another arm and then a leg and then his body and then his head and then finally he's all made of tin. And I forget which, but yeah, that was like a fascinating concept to a child.
That book, much more even so than Tolkien, has that perfect rhythm to it that makes it both interesting for a child and like a little bit lulling, which makes it a good
and night
story.
time.
Also, just boring enough to put them to sleep. Which
Exactly. That's exactly what you need.
Yeah, Treasure Island has this when the kid's older.
Ooh,
I think the number of times I fell asleep to Treasure Island because it's like boats and chores on boats.
At some point in the future, I'm really looking forward to reading my kids the Swiss Family Robinson. I was really, really into that book in middle school. I don't know why. But like,
well, I remember why, Raygan, because we had the great illustrated classics versions of it, and it had all the gory illustrations when like the giant boa constrictor ate their pet donkey that they all loved.
That
and
was
things
great.
Like that.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
have you ever gone to Disney and gone to the island?
I have. I've heard they've redone it. It's now a Tarzan thing. But I saw it.
It wasn't last time I went.
Yeah,
so.
Last time I went too, it was still the Swiss Family Robinson treehouse, and it was great. It's right out of the movie. That movie holds up too. I think it's great. I mean, it's probably I'm probably going to be canceled for saying that. I don't remember. There's probably some horrible like violence against natives in it or something that I'm not remembering. But I hope not. I hope that movie is not canceled because I loved it so much when I was a kid. Anyway, I guess I'll just roll right into what was making me happy this week. And it's a pretty quick one, but I wanted to recommend to folks. So in my household, the biggest release of the year maybe has been Hello Kitty Island Adventure, which is a new video game as part of Apple Arcade. And my wife is playing it. I am playing it. My daughter has seen it and thought it is interesting. It is actually really good. Like, first of all, I have a lot of affection for Hello Kitty, the whole Sanrio cast. This has all of them. And on the surface, this game looked like it was going to be like basically Animal Crossing meets Hello Kitty, right? That was what seemed like was sort of the pitch. And already I was like, well, that seems like a good pitch, but I probably won't spend that much time with that because, I dropped off of Animal Crossing like everybody else did. And like, I never got that into like decorating my house or whatever. And this game actually isn't really that. It is a very seamless mashup of Hello Kitty of Hello Kitty, yes, but like of the Animal Crossing sort of island life simmy stuff with a more structured adventure like the Zelda series. So you have like mechanics like the Breath of the Wild style stamina mechanic for being able to like climb structures, right? You have like lots of NPCs in the world. They all have their own likes and dislikes, and they give you quests and so on. So every NPC has their own kind of quest line. There are little like puzzle dungeons or there's puzzle rooms all over the island that are kind of like the shrines in Breath of the Wild. You go into them and solve a little like environmental puzzle or a little platforming puzzle or what have you, and you get a reward. I haven't played a ton of it, but my wife has put a lot of time into it because she told me immediately, she was like, this is better than Animal Crossing. And she put like a couple 100 hours into Animal Crossing. Like the only video game she's ever put like that kind of time into. But like, this is a really good game. If you have any affection for the Hello Kitty characters, you're going to be really charmed by it. You get to create your own little Sanrio guy at the beginning of the game. I made mine a little duck and he's adorable and I love him. You interestingly, you don't seem to be able to like decorate your own house, but you can decorate. There's like guest houses on the island that you can decorate. So there's a little bit of that if you're into that side of things. But I was mostly like impressed that like they've kind of seamlessly taken the like Animal Crossing model and made it a little more directed. Like you have quests to do in this. It's a little more specific about what you should be doing at any given time. And I don't know, maybe it's just because I have affection for the Sanrio characters, but like, I like that Hang-Yodan is there. I want to go talk to Karopi. Like, that's freaking great, man. Like, I love that.
Is the one that's an egg there?
Not exactly. You mean Gudetama.
Gudetama.
So there's in the Sanrio universe, there's sort of like the core Sanrio friends, which is like Hello Kitty and like, all of the like Hello Kitty adjacent, all of Hello Kitty's hangers on, right? And they're all here. It starts with a plane crash, by the way. All of them are on the airplane, but very amusingly, there's one
We're
other
going down. No,
yeah, exactly. No, it's very cute. Like the plane is going down, and they all like get little like party balloons and like jump and float down like Fortnite style. There's a little like rings you can fly through as you're floating down onto the island, just like you're like, where are we dropping, boys? It's very funny.
Okay.
But like it, mostly it's like the Hello Kitty crew, but also like Agretsuko is there, and on the plane, like you go up to her and she's like, everyone else seems to know each other, and I don't know any of these other people because like she's kind of in her own world in the Sanrio like property universe, but she's here in the game. So, but yeah, I don't know. It's well done. It's consistently at least a little bit funny. And mechanically way more interesting than you would think. And you can play it totally with a touchscreen if you're just playing on an iPhone or whatever. But you can also play it with a controller. It has full controller support, and it runs on Mac and iPad and the Apple TV. So it has the feel of a full console game. It has little like incentives for like checking in every day that feel like maybe they could have potentially been related to a once envisioned freemium mechanic or whatever, but they're essentially just options that like it gives you like extra furniture if you're like playing the game every day, and it doesn't even require that you do it every day. Like it has like a cooldown or something, so it's really, really well done. It doesn't feel exploitative. It is exactly not what I was expecting out of a Hello Kitty mobile game, so I can't recommend it enough. It's great, and I'm liking it. My wife is loving it. It's cool. I recommend it.
Were you the one who told me about the have you heard about this boy obscure Sanrio character zine?
Oh, I think I did. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Highly recommend folks looking that up if you haven't. It is a delight.
Yeah, well, it has
There are a lot of obscure Sanrio characters.
Challenges.
Yeah,
Big Challenges is my favorite disused Sanrio character, which
Tell
is
me
just
he
a
makes
badly-
it into the
sadly,
the
I have
game.
seen no Big Challenges references in the game. Shane, your specific question is Gudetama in the game. Sort of. There are little Gudetamas all over the island, and it's kind of like a collectible that you can find. So like you can find like, you go to the beach, maybe if you find a little secluded corner of the beach, there is a Gudetama sunning himself, and you have a camera, and you collect them by taking little photographs, or you can even do selfies of yourself with the Gudetamas.
That's
that's
funny.
like it's great. So he's not really.
If I had one takeaway
According to the Hello
from-
Kitty Island Adventure Wiki,
Oh God.
Big Challenges does appear as a visitor at some point.
What?
Oh my God. I
can't wait.
I think it sounds like they did right by Gudetama, because if I have one thing to report from watching his TV show, it's that you should not make him the main character of something, because it's existentially
Sad
horrifying.
It is. It's a weird TV show. I enjoyed that show. I liked it, but
I also
yeah.
did, but there were a lot just like the Wizard of Oz, there were a lot of unanswerable questions from the 5-year-old set.
Not as good as the Agretsuko show. The Agretsuko show is
great.
actually legitimately great. I recommend it for anybody. It's great. But yeah. Anyway, that's my what's making me happy this week. Laura, what's making you happy this week?
So a lot of the things that are making me happy are rehashes from things I've said previously, like Strange New World is still great. That is Star Trek for those, but it's good even if you don't like Star Trek. I think it's just a really good show. Harley Quinn just started back up again, but instead of talking about stuff that I'm like, I continue to still be into shows that are still good. I'm going to pick a really small thing, which is
Witches are awesome. They're making me happy this week.
Yeah. Which is we in our little household love to do needle drops. Like things are going to start in the running, start a song. I have rediscovered one of the best songs for having an awesome day, and that is the main theme to Pacific Rim. Folks, if you haven't heard this, it is Ramin Djawadi, who's the person who did the Game of Thrones theme song. And if you want you making coffee in the morning to feel like you're gonna ride a giant mecha into the ocean, may I suggest the main theme song to Pacific Rim. It rocks so hard, and then it goes harder for no apparent reason. It just ups in the halfway through the song. It's yeah, it is one of the 5 songs on my doing awesome shit playlist, which are all it's a song from How to Train Your Dragon. It's all the things you really need for a good time. And we listened to it because we tried to go see the movies. Everything is sold out because we were near a small theater, and I live in New York, and Barbie is sold out for the next week. Oppenheimer is sold out forever. And we were we want to try to see Mission Impossible before it gets kicked out. And inexplicably, the only thing we could get was like a 9:45 p.m. showing on Friday, which sounds cool on paper. That movie's 3 hours.
Oh my God.
And you know, when it starts at 9:45, that's when the trailers start. So like, it's not going to start playing till 10. And even though this is a block away from me, like that movie's ending at 1. And we were already tired. So we were like, okay, we're going to drink coffee and we're going to listen to Pacific Rim and we're going to go to Mission Impossible.
Nice.
And we were like, okay. That was a better time than the movie, but like if you need
I notice
the
you're not
energy.
recommending the movie.
Look, the stunts were great. Haley Atwell was great. The movie was way too long, and it is some of the dumbest exposition I've ever heard in a movie. To the point, Justin was covering his mouth because he didn't want to get kicked out for laughing. He was like muting himself because he was like so mad and laughing so hard at some of the exposition, but he thought like he was going to get kicked out of the movie theater for laughing. Good time, like into the movie's great, but you have to sit through 2 hours before that. So
Oh well.
yeah, but Pacific Rim theme song. Maybe watch Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1 on.
Wait, Dead Reckoning Part 1? I've been following this. So they're doing like a whole like double header thing.
Yep. The entity needs 2 movies to be defeated, apparently. Not
The
happy
entity.
about it.
Okay, I'm looking forward to finding out more.
Yeah, watch it at home.
All right, will do. I did actually manage to go out to the theater recently.
Jealous.
So I really, really wanted to see Barbie in theaters.
Yes.
And I realized that like my wife wasn't interested. And I have 3 small
Scandal.
children. I know. Well, she doesn't like comedies, you know. She's a horror movie buff, and so just wasn't interested.
I mean,
and so I realized the only option I was going to have. The only option I was going to have to watch it was I was going to have to make my own opportunity. I decided to take a long lunch and go to the dine-in theater and see it all by myself. I just took myself on a workday lunch date to go see Barbie. And I already said my making me happy, but like that was a good plan. And Barbie was great. And I enjoyed going to see it all by myself and being the only person in the theater at, what was it, like 11:30 on a Monday. Perfect. Great decision.
The day I told my boss I was leaving a company a couple jobs ago, and she was like, "Hi, can I tell the group? And then like, can you give me like an hour to control the narrative or whatever?" Like she was like, "Okay, I'm gonna send the email, but then like you're gonna like not answer. Like, can you just be at lunch?" And I was like, "I will be at the Downton Abbey movie screening at a matinee. I'm just gonna go to that."
Nice.
For like an hour and a half, midday on the day I leave this job that I don't like. And she was like, "Great." And I was like, "You're no longer my boss." Like,
nice.
you didn't have to approve it, but
Yeah.
it's what I'm doing. So like midday matinees, that's the thing I miss the most about freelancing.
Mm-hmm.
I went to so many of them. The fact that like the teenagers who were like skipping out of school were really afraid I was going to narc on them and I was like,
so funny.
"No, I'm just an adult in a 2 p.m. matinee of Jungle Cruise."
Don't narc on me, please, teenagers. To my boss. Yeah, it was the first time I've kind of done that on a work day and just like went and didn't tell anybody. And I don't think it'll be the last. So I enjoyed it. Anyway, highly recommend Barbie. I thought it was great. Great movie. Totally worth watching in theaters if you can get the chance.
Can't wait to see it when it finally I can get a ticket to it.
Yeah. Okay. Listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this very joyful episode of The Short Game. You can find us on the internet at shortgame.fm. That is a website where you can find links and buttons for all the things that matter. You can click on a thing to go to our Patreon, which is where you can support the show. All of our listeners get access to our Discord community, which is where we talk about games, talk about the show, talk about upcoming stuff. You can recommend games there. It's the very best venue for that if you want to tell us what you think is good. And we're always looking out for that stuff. So please join us. We would love to have you. You can also, from that page, find all of our socials, including on Mastodon and everything. I personally pretty much only do the socials on Mastodon. So you can find me at Raygan, that's Raygan, at bird.rodeo. If you search me on Mastodon, you'll find me there. You can, and I'm also on Threads, but I'm only lurking there. I'm at Raygan, Raygan. Shane, where can people find you?
You can find me on X at Shane.
Yeah.
You can find me more so on Mastodon at Shane at bird.rodeo, which I've now switched my Mastodon. Actually, we need to update the shortgame.fm to make sure it's pointing to my real Mastodon.
I'll do that.
I'm weighing my options. I'm not I've not decided whether I am still an ex Twitter user. So we'll see.
Sigh. Laura, where are you these days?
I mean, I am on Mastodon at Laura J. Nash at bird.rodeo, and I haven't deleted my X account, but it's mostly because like there are people who I can't find elsewhere, but I just don't do anything on it. So if you message me on me, I will never see it. I think my last thing was a retweet about Animorphs from January. So
well done.
By the time we get to the end of this cycle of like social media and shitification, I may well be ending this podcast by saying like, you could find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Oh God. Listeners, if you have a suggestion for where you would like to see us interact with people, is there a place where you, listener, think that
what are you doing
such as ours should be? Let us know. It all seems too much these days, but I guarantee you that we talk on Discord.
Yes, we talk a lot on Discord.
That is a certainty. That is the best place. And in fact, I'll just share my Discord username on the podcast. It's Raygan K, Raygank. If you really want to talk to me, you can just message me on Discord. I talk to people there all the time.
That's a good point. Now, Discord names are now something you can actually say on a podcast because they made all of us pick one instead of being like, DS69812, whatever it was. Yeah, I'm S.Kelly on there.
Nice.
So.
Laura J. Nash, although depending on the server, I'll show up as Spider Laura.
Well, anyway, this was far more of that than was needed on this episode. You can find everything on shortgame.fm. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Short Game.